hopefully we can get some
big pots.
nice. Yes. Okay, so as you say, this guy has a broken stack. Never can go too wrong with a small bet. And then here, I think this is the kind of spot where we discussed before. So I think in theory, you definitely like check back here. Exploitatively, I like to go with like a small bet, thinking that a recreational is not going to bluff enough on the river, and they um might still get value from hands like that. Whereas facing a regular, they might bluff with that hand, and then I lose some value in some sense. But I think one that we can discuss after this hand.
Mhm.
So this guy three bets a lot. I was planning to like bluff for. I think this is very interesting. So I have done this before, where I open shove. Just because there's so much dead money in the middle, and definitely do this with ace king. And this guy kind of caps. I don't know if it's a bit too much though, like with king jack. Um, Given this guy's three bet is so large, and I think this guy never calls, I'm gonna go for it. Unless this guy, cold calls. Yeah, I don't know if that's too much. I've personally found quite a lot of success with this play. It's never really gone too wrong. But yeah, we can talk about both.
Okay, let's start with the small one. Start with the pocket eights. This is the
Yes.
spicy one for afterwards.
Yeah.
So important, like as you said, with small bet is definitely fine. You can go large here with your better hands against the recreation, and go small here with your, under pairs that just want to get some value and some protection. Important note though is after you bet small and you check back the turn, any
Hmm.
fish will overbluff the river. So
Oh, really? Okay.
like the most common line where regulars, but more so fish, heavily overbluff because they play too many hands pre-flop, they call too much on the flop. You check back and they see the green light. They bluff too much. Same goes when you check back the flop, they will bluff too much. So it's
Hmm.
definitely fine to just check back and call the river against any non-overbet sizing. Um,
Is there an
when
argument that this guy has a very low VPIP? So if he's a fish, he's like the very passive type. But maybe yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah,
So
point taken. If it's like 30-35 VPIP, then definitely
yeah,
agree. Yeah.
if you would have checked the hand during the game and said like, well, this guy is passive and therefore I
Yeah.
go for another bet, the point would have definitely made sense. So make sure to get in the habit of seeing who your opponent is, right?
Mhm.
If you have some, like, either take notes or use some labels to kind of figure out who your opponents are. And if you play this line and you have no info and you play c bet check check and then he checks on the river, maybe not with a hand like king queen high, but rather with a hand like 8-7 and he doesn't bluff, then
Yeah.
this is a guy that is not going to bluff and you'd rather continue and just bet your hand on the turn. The problem with betting pocket eights on the, I mean, it's still fine. The problem with eights is probably just too weak to put in more money in and get called by worse enough of
Yeah,
the time.
9x or
Yeah,
something.
rather 9x you can do this small bet to check back in position against passive regulars, but eights probably I'll just check back and look to call rivers.
Yeah,
Um, and
makes
then
sense.
the other hand, this is
Maybe
well,
it's a huge punt.
in theory, it's definitely a huge fun.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
um, yeah, it's the next one.
This
So
one.
King
Yeah.
Jack from offsuit from under the gun is the bottom of your opening range, right? It's just
Yes.
whenever you face a three bet, it's always a fold. There's never any mixing going on. Anything else than folding is a huge punt. When the button calls, this should is obviously not a thing. It puts more dead money in. Um, we probably should increase our forward jamming frequency. So a hand like Ace King that maybe otherwise mixes, I would definitely jam pure. And like Queens, or also a really great candidate to forward jam. If you want to push it a little bit, a hand like Jacks or Tens maybe could go forward jamming, given how much dead money there's in the middle. Um,
King
Maybe an
Jack.
Ace Queen offsuit, right?
Yeah.
But you really want to
Yeah.
think about your equity when called, right? Um, you're like, there's some guys that call pocket sevens and then fold it to a jam here, but there's also some guy that call ace king on the button and then call the forward shove. Um, Plus, you just have so many better candidates, right? Now, of course,
Yeah.
if they both overfold heavily, but it's not like they will overfold, right? They will still call queens plus ace king, both of these guys, and then they're playing fine. I'm sure if they know that you jam king jack offsuit, well, maybe they should call a little bit wider, but
Hmm.
I doubt this makes money over the long run.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Fair
I
point.
would be a bit more careful with getting in hands. Just think about how close is your hand normally to a continue, and how close it is between call and maybe four bet or four bet shove. You can do that. You can accomplish the same very often by just four betting. So let's say you had a hand like king jack suited, which is a four bet bluff at a frequency. With the guy that cold calls puts you more money, you can still go for a four bet. You win the same without risking your whole stack.
Yeah, that's true. I guess the other point worth discussing is if this guy didn't cold call, I was planning to four bet bluff anyways, because this frequency is so high. And obviously our typical candidates are like ace queen off, sorry, ace jack off, um, king queen off, and then we can maybe add in king jack as a very loose four bet bluff candidate exploitatively against that guy with, pretty crazy stats.
Yeah, and his stats he could just be running well at 17% is not that much of it. And another point here is just like take hands that are normally four bet bluffs and just increase their frequency. King jack
Hmm.
off and king queen off in these positions are always pure folds. So rather just take the suited varieties of those, king queen and king jack suited, ace five, ace four suited if you want to increase your frequency.
Yeah. Going for squeeze here. Interesting. So noting that it's under the gun will cause a squeeze, so probably quite a strong range actually. But I'm gonna start off with a simplified range 25%. And this hand, I guess, is not too bad. It's got some backdoor potential. If we get called, probably doing a lot of checking on the turn. I don't think we want to put more money into the pot. So just checking it down, hoping to get to showdown. With his line, I feel like it's a bit more of stuff like tens, jacks. I think this is an interesting one. I feel like this sizing is kind of under bluffed, and the configurations are quite tight. So I'm probably just gonna fold this. But yeah, definitely interesting one. And here, three donks, maybe go for raise. I think the board is so good that we can go for raise. Yeah, but yeah, this
Okay,
one.
so the 10-5 suited from cutoff is maybe pushing it a little bit. So I would just say
Yes,
fold
yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah,
But
exactly.
I guess you were autopiling because of the other hand. Um, this one, I mean, squeeze pre-flop fine, flop c-bet definitely fine. How the interesting point here, maybe again this is just because of the video, but try to make a habit of not snap act too much, especially on the turn
Yeah.
here, right? You're gonna have a lot of decisions here with a hand like ace queen ace jack. Do you want to barrel? Do you want to check? What are you gonna do with jack 10? Are you gonna bluff it always? Are you gonna check sometimes? What about pocket tens? Are you gonna bluff them sometimes, right? So by snap checking, you kind of tell your opponent, well, maybe you have a hand like ace five, but very often, well, you have queens, or you just turn the random king, right? And this is something, especially when you snap or kind of snap check the river again, kind of confirms it to your opponent. While maybe you want to slow play aces or kings on the turn and then think about slow playing again on the river, or you have a decision with a hand like ace jack. You don't know if you want to bluff catch or value bet yourself. So there's a there's a lot of information that you give away by using these timings.
Hmm.
Your line is still probably the one I would take, like c bet, check flop, sorry, check turn, and then check fold the river. It's probably still the best. It's very hard for imposition to float hands on the flop that now could bluff, right? He would need to float hands like
Yes.
pocket fives, which first of all need to call a squeeze, call a flop, and then decide to bluff on the river. Um, However, if you take a bit more time on a turn on the river, you can think about, turning some of your king x hands into bluffs, jack jams on the
Yes.
river, because you will
Yes.
have ace king, aces and kings here, and some of them will slow play the turn, and then maybe even slow play the river to stack hand like ace queen or ace jack. So your hand would be an okay candidate, and if your king x, king queen, king jack would be fine. But because you kind of tell your opponent how capped you are, it's hard for them to believe that you actually have
Mm.
a strong hand by checking twice.
Yeah, that point aside, I think, well, definitely agree. And then I think the point I made before about like him calling a squeeze from under the gun with one person behind, um, condenses his range, well, makes his range a bit stronger than usual, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what made me fold. For example, if it was a heads up pot and then let's say a three bet and then cutoff calls, I definitely would consider um bluff raising the river. But this range is just too strong and I think it's underbluffed.
Yeah, I agree.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's because of the configurations. The main reason I folded. And then secondly, maybe bit because of sizing. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, I guess his sizing is quite standard to go three quarters at this point. But yeah, it's just really hard to float. To call anything in a flop there's a very natural bluff, because anything that he calls on the flop is basically a pair.
Uh, Simplifying to range check on anything that's not super favorable.
Mm-hmm.
And here, I think continuing to check is probably fine. Uh, my strategy here will be I'll have like three different sizings. Um, this is, I guess, one of the sports that you can range check a bit closer to range check. And then here, I don't see any reason to continue betting. Just gonna maybe check call. Here, probably just a fold.
Mm-hmm. If you want, we can sit out also quickly talk about those two hands,
Yeah.
although they're small. So I think the king queen is rather standard. You don't need to range. This board is okay. You can play bets or checks, but you can range check. That's a fine strategy. On a turn, I probably wouldn't play three sizes myself. Maybe just, if you have two sizes, that's already tough enough to balance. And obviously your hand never really bets. It has too much showdown value.
No, I
And
meant across all turn cards
all
on the
turns.
check
Okay,
check
okay.
line.
Yes, yes, okay.
On this one, I think when overcard comes, we probably go a bit more polar. So it's like over bet or like large bet, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, overbet makes a lot of sense, right? If he caps
Yeah.
himself, he's not going to have a 9, and you have the strongest ace, so overbet makes sense. And in the other hand, um,
Yeah.
the again a flop where you want to have a lot of checks, but again, I would never really play range checks as in position. Um, and then on the turn, be a bit careful, right? You still have a gut shot with whilst having ace high, so beat all of his bluffs, and there's a lot of them here on the turn. You have a lot of potential to maybe bluff some runouts. So I wouldn't fold here against the half pot. This is a
Okay.
common league that a lot of, even though it's double flush drawn, it's maybe even close in theory. Um, but yeah, I would
Yeah.
still try not to overfold in this note where people bluff too much as the big blind, and you have a lot of nice bluffing opportunities once he checks to you on the river. Um,
That's true. Yeah. I missed the gut shot in the moment,
yeah.
but yeah, with the gut shot, I think we can prob probably can't fold. But yeah.
All right, let's do another 5 minutes or so, and then
Sure.
call it a video. But I think overall you play really solid. So like these things that we're picking on, they're more minor things apart from the king jack offsuit shove. Everything else it was
Yeah.
in the realm of losing very little EV.
This guy opens to decently large sizing. I was considering a three bet, but a bit too weak.
Yeah, just fold. Right?
Yeah,
3.5x
just
is a
fold.
stronger is a stronger range. You don't need to force it. Your stronger hands will make more money, and that's it.
I think this hand can go both ways. Starting off with small bet probably can't go wrong. Looking to go for probably double barrel into a check. Standard line.
that seems well played. You always have the option to check back turn as well, especially with
Mhm.
hands that don't necessarily can go for 3 streets of values anyway. You can always check back to either bluff catch river or bet the river yourself if he checks to you. Because if you start betting all of your top pairs on the turn, um, you, yeah, your checking range gets quite weak.
Yeah. No point calling here. Set mining when he's that short stacked is
Yeah.
just no point. I was going to call this, but multi-way I don't think necessary. Similar here. Um,
Yeah,
just
so
calling to see a flop.
multi-way is actually fine to still call hands like 6-3 suited. Hands that you would
Yeah.
maybe fold there would be like Jack 10 offsuit. Hands that play poorly multi-way. While, these low suited connectors, they play pretty well.
Mhm.
Because whenever you hit, the opponents won't hit. So your outs are quite clean.
Yeah, agreed. This hand, I think, no point betting without a heart. Um, and then here, I guess the question I'm thinking about is how much he snapshacks, so I don't think he ever has a very strong heart. The question is, do we have any showdown value? Um, I think we do have a bit, but maybe a big bet is higher EV because we can make him fold out like maybe some 8x. Um, not too sure. I'm gonna go for it, but not too sure.
Yes, I like it. I really like the
Mhm.
thought process here, right? Like maybe you win sometimes, but
Yeah,
probably
just
actually never really, right? Just betting is better. People really struggle to defend in this line when they
exactly.
see bet and then check the flop, check the turn. Um, this can be tough for you to have enough bluffs anyway. Like maybe some 6-5 suited without a heart that um, you check back on the turn, but yeah, very little bluff. So you definitely
Mhm.
um, rather just overfold. So rather just overbluff in lines like this one.
Yeah, and then I think here I would four bet with like ace four, ace five suited, ace three kind of just falls outside that category.
Yep.
Folding probably can't go too wrong. Let's do maybe like one more interesting hand and then
Mm-hmm.
we can
Sounds
call
good.
it. Yeah, definitely good to revise some concepts. The turn barreling and the paired board heuristics was like a good revision for today.
Mm-hmm.
From my side here, actually, that was a bit of autopilot. I saw two Broadway cards and then just defaulted to small bet, but actually, I think this board might be like over bet board. Not too sure. And again, the turn is an easy barrel with like the with like the double with like the double gut shot. So I'm not sure why I didn't double barrel there as played. And then here, I think he'll have a lot of showdown value hands. Yeah, definitely misplayed that hand. Got a bit pressed.
Okay, well we can talk about that hand
Yeah,
instead then as the last one, even though it's not a big hand, but I guess it's you
yeah.
don't have to force any big hands, otherwise we yeah.
And here double paired board. I think ace high has a decent showdown. Yep, fine with that.
Okay, so ace three
Yeah.
hand is well played. Now the Jack 10, as you said, you realized yourself, right? It's a board where you can size up, but if you go small with range, it's not the end of the world. The more important
Hmm.
things are how we play the turn, and this is definitely a hand that it doesn't
Yeah.
have to barrel, but is a really great candidate to do so. And then probably fire through on most rivers. With a hand like this one, not having spades, blocking Jack 10, as our Ace 10 and Ace Jack. So it would be a great candidate for that. Um, but also more importantly is that you probably don't really want to give up too much both in theory, but also as an exploit, this board is really good for you. So you can bluff close to almost all of your non-showdown hands here, right? You're gonna have a lot of hands like ace three that go for c-bet check back to turn. Maybe a hand like pocket kings that wanna go for a bet. And he also really wants you to fight for these pots. I don't want you to just check and give up in lines where your opponent showed weakness twice. This is one where, especially at 25 NL, everybody will overfold. So the simplification is just to never give up in lines like this one and just bluff everything. And if
Yeah.
you don't double barrel because your hand is like the ace three hand, not so great, or in this case you kind of missed it, just make sure that you do bet the river and make him fold a hand like, a pocket pair maybe, or even just random king 10, king jack highs that he had, like in this case, or maybe king 5 of spades that he forgot to bluff. You want to make sure that you at least bluff at some point, right? But yeah, the
Yeah.
ideal line would be probably to triple barrel this hand.
It's definitely quite hard to play and
And
talk
talk.
at the same time. I think without commentating, it would be a bit easier to find more aggressive lines. But I guess to aggress, you need to think through it a bit more. It's a bit harder while commentating. So a bit more respect to you guys putting out those, commentary videos. I think definitely if I was playing on my own, I would at least consider um, betting the river. But a lot of these running out of time, so just go on autopilot. It's quite hard, yeah.
Yeah, don't feel any pressure, right? Like this is,
Yeah.
I'm sure it's easier to play without the pressure of, especially having someone else watch you and critique. You don't want to make mistake or look silly or whatever. But
Hmm.
yeah, I think there were some interesting hands. I hope you guys also
Yeah.
learned something from this session. And if you uh, have questions maybe to Leo directly or something about the coaching, whatever, I'm sure you can just drop him a message.
Hmm.
And yeah, hope you enjoyed it, Leo. It was fun. Some
Yeah, it was
interesting
fun.
hands.
Thank you.
And have a good one, guys. See you the next one. Bye bye.